course, if you have your own stories, please share if you want to hear them in a future video. Let's get into it. I hope you enjoy it. Cheers. I'm drinking Earl Grey today. Okay. So, hi Leah. Hi. I thought I would share 2 stories with you about things that I have encountered. Story 1. A while back, I was out with some friends for Halloween. My friends and I went out for drinks, and we were walking through town when a group of guys walked past us. And one of them stopped in his tracks when he saw me. He then looked at me and he said something along the lines of, "I know you from a past life." At first, I thought that he was just drunk and messing around. Plus, I thought he was trying to freak me out with it being Halloween and all. So I jokingly went along with it. However, he then proceeded to tell me that he was actually being serious, and he walked away. As he was walking away, I still thought that he was joking, and I showed it after him, asking what my name had been in this past life, to which he replied, "Maria." Now, this is where things start to get weird, because back when I was a child, I had an imaginary friend. Not the sort of friend that I physically saw or anything like that. It was more kind of my own game where I would talk to this friend, and then I would put on a younger style voice, pretending to be him. The name of this friend was Lucifer, and I gave myself a different name, Maria. So you can probably see why this interaction weirded me out. I have never told anyone about this game, and even years later, I still haven't. It was just my secret game. The messed up part is due to one of the games that I played whilst pretending to be Maria and Lucifer. One particular evening, I had my mega sketcher, which is a childhood drawing device for those who don't know, and I pretended that the pen on the mega sketcher was a knife, and I convinced Lucifer to push the pen, a pretend knife, into my stomach. I would then do this to myself, dig the pen into my stomach, pretending to be Lucifer, stabbing me. What? It was not until this random guy from that night said all of this to me that it registered that my imaginary childhood friend's name was obviously the same as the devil, and it kind of started to freak me out. It also registered with me just how messed up and weird it was that I did that to myself as a young child. The whole ordeal could just be one big coincidence, but it's be told by a complete stranger that my name was Maria in a past life. It was weird. I would like to add that at that age, I didn't know anything about demons, etc. So I was actually unaware that Lucifer was even the same name as the devil / Satan. Kids do weird stuff. Like, I'm sure we all know that. Kids do and say weird stuff. I don't know. But that would be really weird to have someone say, I knew you in a past life. Which, by the way, I am actually thinking about going to a past life regression therapist. I don't know. I don't actually know what her title is. I think she might actually be a psychologist / parapsychologist. But I actually found one in a city near me. And I know it's crazy, but I have always been so fascinated by that, by the possibility of past lives, and I'm actually thinking about going just to see what it would be like. And if I do that, I will obviously be doing a video on it. Okay, let's get into story 2 from the same person. Okay. Okay. About 10 years ago, my mom and I moved out of my childhood home as she and her then partner wanted to buy a new place. I never felt unsettled in the new house. I actually loved it. However, there were a few occurrences. My bedroom door was situated next to my bed, so close that I was able to open the door whilst laying down on the bed. We only lived in this house for under a year due to my mom and her partner splitting. But for the majority of the time living there, almost every night, I would wake up in a half-asleep state, open the door whilst still in bed, and I would peer out into the dark hallway, always looking at the same spot for around 1 minute or so. I found this really strange, but didn't really think much into it until it happened again and again. I can't even give you an estimate as to how many times this happened. The other encounters took place whilst I was home alone. Shocker. I experienced the clear sound of footsteps running up the stairs, which were right next to my bedroom, so that sound couldn't be mistaken. And what I can only describe as someone aggressively kicking the front door. That's scary. The last encounter in that house was during the day when I was home alone with my late dog. I remember this like it was yesterday. My dog had this toy donkey which would always be in his basket. We were both sat on the living room floor, and I got up to go in the kitchen for something, leaving my dog who had been sat with me the entire time. The kitchen was next to the living room, and you stepped into the main hallway to switch between the two rooms. had an uncle. He was her mother's brother, and she absolutely adored him. He was this really cool, really funny guy that would give you sweets when parents were not looking. He was a police officer, so he trained a lot. One time, he was at a shooting range at some kind of training. Oh my God. And tragically, something went horribly wrong, and he ended up shooting himself, accidentally committing suicide. Nobody really knew what happened. His colleagues were not looking in his direction at the time. They just heard a gun being fired when it wasn't supposed to. They got scared and then they saw him on the floor. Oh, that's awful. It was horrific. I mean, it was supposed to just be a normal training day, and it ended in such a tragedy. A very important part of the story is that because they were all policemen, they gathered details of the accident, including the time that he passed. Let's make it 2:43 because I don't remember the actual time. There was a whole investigation, and nothing was wrong with the gun. He simply made a terrible, terrible mistake. This was a difficult time for Marta's family. Death of a family member is never pleasant, but this was just so tragic and unexpected that it deepened the sadness. Marta and her mom were affected the most, both of them absolutely heartbroken. But as time went on, things got better. Exactly a year after his passing, on the anniversary of the day, in fact, Marta and her mom decided to stay home and just talk about him, sharing the best memories and celebrating his life. They were sitting in the living room watching some photos when the lights started to flicker. At first they brushed it off. That kind of thing happens. But then it intensified, and they actually started to feel really uncomfortable. They decided to go upstairs to Mom's bedroom and watch a movie to occupy their heads just with something else. But as they made their way upstairs, the lights were actually going crazy, and something pulled them to look at the wall. was propped next to the shopping carts, dressed in really dirty and old clothing. His hair was very long and covered his face, as his head was hanging down, so you couldn't really see what he looked like. He had an old tin in his hands, probably for people to throw in some money. But Joanna noticed that everyone was ignoring him, and it wasn't in a way that they were trying not to look at him, as people do when they see homeless people. No. Rather, it seemed as if he was actually invisible to everyone but Joanna and her husband. She felt very sorry for the man and asked her husband for some coins to throw in the man's tin so that he could at least eat something warm. Her husband was against it. He was sure that the man would spend the money on alcohol, but Joanna insisted, and he eventually gave up and he gave her the money. Joanna approached the man and put the money in the tin. The man did not even move. She turned around, walked back to her husband, and they headed into the store. But as they made their way there, she felt the need to turn around. Mind you, all of this was in like the span of 2 minutes. She stopped and turned, and the man was gone. The store had this huge open space parking lot, and as the man was nowhere to be found, it was impossible for him to leave so quickly that she wouldn't have seen him anymore. But that was what happened. It was like he just disappeared on the spot. Chills went down her spine. Her husband was also really confused, but as a no-nonsense kind of person, he simply brushed it off. They went to do what they came to do. They put that situation at the back of their minds. That happened during the summer. A few months later, as the winter approached, they started to get ready for the cold weather. At the time, winters in Poland were extremely cold. Right now, you can't really call winter. You can't call winter winter because of the global warming. So, not cool. True. So everyone had really warm clothing and shoes on. Joanna was saving money for a few months, and she finally was able to afford some new leather boots. They were warm, pretty, and much needed because her old boots were slowly falling apart. One evening, when Joanna was home alone, somebody knocked at the door. She opened, and at her doorstep was an old, extremely skinny woman. She apologized for the inconvenience and asked if she could give her some bread and water. She was clearly homeless, so Joanna didn't even think twice. She packed all kinds of food in a bag and she gave it to this lady. The woman the old woman was walking away, Joanna noticed that her shoes had holes in them. They were very old and almost completely destroyed. She called out to the woman and she gave her the new shoes that she had just bought. The brand new leather boots. She figured, I can survive one more winter in my old ones. That woman definitely needed them more. That night, as Joanna was going to sleep, she felt a weird sense of calm, one that she had not experienced in quite a while. And it was like everything is going to be okay. And ever since that day, something switched. Joanna never again experienced poverty. She always had money, food, and everything that she wanted. Everything always went the way that she wanted. She just became extremely lucky. She said to my mom that those two situations were tests. The angels were checking if she would help those who needed more, and then she was rewarded for it. I don't know if I would call them angels, maybe more of just good karma. But when that man disappeared from the parking lot, that was really weird. Anyways, I feel like that's a nice thing to know, that the good you give does come back to you. I love that. I love that because it's true. Because if you do good, even if you don't have anything tangible come back to you, you do still have something come back to you because you know that you did good, and it's just a good way to live. In my opinion, I love that. So this one is another one from my mom's work. My mom's work friend, just a different one. Her name is Teresa. This happened in the 90s. Teresa, her husband, daughter, and grandmother lived in an apartment in Warsaw. The grandma moved there from the countryside when her husband passed away, so she wouldn't be alone. She was about 90 years old at the time. When the grandma was born, Poland was light years behind when it comes to pretty much everything. Technology, medicine, culture, and it was quite common on the countryside to use different ways to get by. I don't want to say pagan, but it was witchcraft of some sort. I think that up until now in smaller villages, there are women called whisperers that use spells, herbs, and things like this to help people. unusual, but she just looked odd. Her stare was really intense, and it was focused on Teresa's daughter. She wasn't moving, she wasn't blinking, she was just staring. Teresa obviously felt extremely uncomfortable and tried to stand in front of her daughter and block the woman from looking at her. But as she moved, her daughter collapsed. Teresa caught her from falling to the ground at the very last moment. It all happened when they stopped at the tram next to their house. So she took her daughter and carried her home. She wasn't really thinking clearly. She just wanted to get her daughter home. And when she was running down the sidewalk, she looked back, and that weird woman was looking at them from the tram window. She finally got home and started to frantically explain to her husband what had just happened. He wanted to call an ambulance, but then the grandma walked out of her bedroom and she said, "Put her on my bed, Teresa. Leave my bedroom and lock the door." Teresa and her husband protested this at first, but the grandma somehow convinced them to do as she said. They left the room and waited anxiously in the kitchen. And after about 5 minutes, they decided that that was enough and that they needed to take their daughter to the hospital. But when they went into the room, they saw their daughter in her great-grandma's lap, laughing, joking, and acting as if nothing had happened. What was even more confusing, she did not remember how she got home from school. She didn't remember the train ride and the weird woman. Grandma didn't really want to give the details of what she did to wake the girl up. She just said that she was charmed and that it's all okay now. She charmed her. I really love that story. I think it's so cool that there are people that are somehow connected to something otherworldly. Cool. Okay, the last story happened to my aunt about 30 years ago. My whole family is pretty religious, as it is in Polish families, so saying a prayer before bed was like just a part of the night routine. My father's sister, Anna, was recently married and came to her mother's house with her husband to spend some time with her. She was in a bit of a faith crisis at the time. Her mother and my grandma were reminding her every night, "Anna, say the prayer," and Anna did as she was told. She didn't want to upset her mom, but one night she refused to pray. Grandma was sad, but she didn't complain. She just be very, very brief, but I woke up one night and our bedroom door is always open, looks right out into the hallway. Woke up, felt like something was watching Eric and I sleep, and there was a man, a very clear human shadow in the doorway of our bedroom with a trench coat and a hat on. And I lost it. I thought there was a person, like a burglar, watching us. It was so scary. I'll never ever forget that. And it wasn't sleep paralysis. I wasn't experiencing that. I was fully mobile. Okay. Hey Leah. Hey. I am a huge fan of yours. Your videos always help me get to sleep, or they give me nightmares. Thank you for watching. Either way, I really appreciate it. Okay, so my story is about my Nan. Her father was Irish, and in World War II, he was sent all over the world to fight for the British Army. However, oh my god, he was captured and put into a prisoner of war camp in Austria. He was there for 2 years, I think, and when the war ended, he didn't find out until he escaped 2 weeks after. My god. Obviously, after seeing the horrors of warfare and experiencing that amount of trauma, he was pretty shaken up. He started going to the pub a lot and would often come home to my Nan's house very, very drunk. One night, when he was walking home from the pub, he heard a very clear and direct voice coming from behind him. He turned to look around, only to see a figure on a motorbike. As the bike got closer, the figure's face became more recognizable, and he began to realize that it was one of his very close friends that he had actually lost in the war. He was obviously absolutely dumbfounded, but his friends apparently said that the next level, but what his friends apparently said next is next level creepy. This man on the bike clearly said in a loud but not shouting voice, "I will always be faster than you," then saying my great-grandfather's name. Then the man rode off on the bike, and he turned around the corner at the end of the road. I understand that he was probably very drunk, but my Nan said that she remembers him recalling the story as if he was entirely sober. its own. There was no earthquake. It just fell and crushed their bed, narrowly missing my great-granddad. Whether these two things were linked, I have no clue. Hope you get the chance to read the story. Have a lovely week. From Niamh. I hope I get your name right. I'm sorry if I don't. You have to let us know, if you're comfortable, of course. Was the friend saying that I will always be faster than you like an inside joke between the two of them? Was that something that they would say to one another? Because if that was the case, then that is a very cool ghost story. It is anyway, but I'm very curious to know if that's the case. Cool. Okay. So